Hello, I'm Lezlie Harrison, your host for Come Sunday on the Rhythm and Song Weekend here on WBGO. Today, I am delighted to be joined by writer, producer, filmmaker, my colleague and friend, Jamara Wakefield, who, along with WBGO Studios, will be releasing a limited series podcast entitled Black House, Black Joy, where you'll meet the DJs, dancers, MCs, and activists who have made the house community what it is today. The podcast will be released next month as we celebrate Black Music Month. We are also joined by a legend in the New York, New Jersey underground dance community, a Paterson, New Jersey native, the legendary house mother, Carolyn Byrd, affectionately known as Miss B. It is my joy to welcome you both. I am what is known as a house head, and my journey found me many nights in the iconic Club Zanzibar in Newark back in the early 80s. So I am thrilled to be both with both of you and to be able to tell the story and hear the stories. Jamara, your creative practices have focused on documenting the lives of Black people. What was your impetus for creating Black House, Black Joy?
Sure. So happy to be here with you, Leslie and Mother
Yeah.
Bird. So, I'm originally from Boston and moved to the tri-state area for school, like lots of people. And then I was teaching in Paterson and moved to New Jersey. And I was really searching in myself, like, what am I going to do here in Jersey? Really asking the universe, like, what my purpose was, knowing that I was a writer, knowing that I'm passionate about the lives of Black people, you know, really just trying to figure it out. And then a friend, DJ Rock Anthony, invited me out to a house music event. And it was the first time that I had been in the house space in Jersey. And I just fell in love. Personally, I just fell in love.
Mm-hmm.
And then, from there, I sort of wanted to make sure that I did this in an ethical way. So I asked him and asked other people in the house community, if we started an oral history project, if we made a film, if we archived the lives of this community, would I have your permission to do so? And we received a resounding yes from the community. And let's just say I've been filming and dancing and having a good time ever since.
Yeah, I was going to say in Boston, and I lived in Boston too. I don't remember any house music per se, but I remember driving from Amherst, Massachusetts when I was in college, coming to New York and New Jersey. We would, somehow we scraped together some money to come down to the house scene in New Jersey or in New York. What was it like working with your peers on Black House, Black Joy, focusing on the cultural and societal impact of house music?
Well, I learned a lot. And about 2 months into filming this project and doing these interviews, like many Black communities, I realized that the Jersey house community has been long documenting itself all by itself. Like honestly, I was hanging out, having fun, meeting folks, really getting acclimated to living in Newark. But the community itself had already been documenting it. So I learned that really what I was doing was really just showing up and kind of bringing all these pieces together for a film and bringing all these pieces together for a podcast. I Black people are gonna celebrate themselves if no one else will. So
Hello.
it's really just been a pleasure for me.
And how did you meet the house mother?
Oh my goodness. So one of the rules in this oral history project for me was that I would never do any cold calls. So everything was by referral. So I'd meet one person, and then if they were supportive and we had a great interview, they would introduce me to someone else, and that domino effect. So eventually someone said, you need to talk to Mother Bird because she's an icon, and there are a few who have been doing it longer than her. And so we met at the Linden festival and had a nice conversation. And I'll just say I have been a huge admirer and loving up on her in public ever since.
Mother Bird, you are a legend for a reason. House music brings people together from all walks of life, and you've seen many generations, I'm sure, of the kids coming through on the house scene. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with house music.
Oh boy.
I know. Hey, we got just a few minutes.
Well, I got into the house scene by hanging out in a club that I shouldn't have been in because I was underage. And well, it can't do nothing to me now, but I ran away from home. And I ended up in a club and ended up getting a job the same night I went there and saw the show. Got in touch with, got to be friends with the artist that was there, and the rest is history.
Yes, it is. And you've seen some of the greats come through on the house scene, the DJs like Timmy Regisford, Larry Levan, Louis Vega. What is the future, do you think, of house music? And where is it heading?
Wow, I don't know because there's so many genres of house music now.
Hmm.
Back in the day, after disco and club and then house, then EDM and all this electronics. I guess with the innovations of technology,
Hmm.
changes people, changes the sound, and
Well, you said something about the different genres of house. Now, when I was coming up, there was like New York house, Chicago house, New Jersey house. That
right,
was that was it. And now it
right,
has become this global movement.
global. And if you go down to South Beach, and they have what they call the Ultra Music Festival, because at one time it was the Winter Music Conference, but that no longer exists. Now it's the Ultra Music Festival, which are all different genres of music. But it used to be underground house where
Mm.
we would enjoy ourselves to the the music, the dance, the culture. But now it has completely. I'm trying to calculate my words so that I don't pinch on anybody. But when they say
Go
house
ahead,
music,
pinch them.
when I pinch them,
Okay.
when I go, I'm expecting real underground house music, but it is totally different music than what I'm used to hearing. It's all boots and pants and boots and pants. I'm like, what? It's
Right.
not soulful. It's not. It's not house.
Well, soulful equals house because many house. And I actually went dancing recently. It's been a while since I've been in the house setting. It's like a blessing. It's like a church service. It's like a hallelujah, get your dance on
Yes.
kind of groove, and that's what makes house music special. What do you see the different? What are the differences, I guess, between the newer generation of house heads and our version of house heads? I'm assuming we're right around in the same age zone. You're probably younger than me, so let me not
Ah,
assume that.
um, I really, I can't put a head on it because when I'm there, I don't differentiate
Hmm.
from the actual age, but I tell my peers to welcome the youth into house. Don't disdain them. Don't keep them out. Welcome them in because this is an art that if you don't, we're going to lose it. So get those kids in there. Bring your kids. I mean, I remember going to clubs or when I DJ'd at parties, people would bring their kids to the club on Sunday afternoon, before it got really loud, and the kids would love it and they would enjoy it. This one kid that he just did the dance parade Sunday. He usually does a float every year. Club Kid Lewis. I remember his mom bringing him to the Paradise Garage. Now he's all grown up, but he's still doing it. He's been. This
Hmm.
is all he knows all his life. So
And
bring.
Jamara, what do you hope that your podcast and eventually your film will do for the house community?
Well, I think the house community is doing a lot for itself.
Hmm.
I think
You're
this
just documenting it.
yeah, I think this work honestly is holding space to one document a history that needs to be on the map. We always talk about Chicago and the UK, right? And Detroit and different places, which is amazing because it's all love, right? It's all love, it's all
Hmm.
the house, right? But Jersey has such a long history over 40 years, right, of sustaining its own community, right?
Mm,
It's whether it be club culture or festival culture. And I think, this podcast, which is perfect for Black Music Month, is really just celebrating the folks who are on the ground. Like they people are going to come out and dance to house, whether or
mhm,
not this film or whether or not this podcast exists, right? So like the best we could do in this present moment is document it and lift it up and celebrate it, in front of the whole world, so that, I hope 100 years from now they look back and say, you know what, they were doing it. You know what? They,
Yes.
they had a community, and it's about music, but it's also about more than music. It's about caring for each other, and it's about joy and survival also. So,
Yes.
I hope we're just leaving something, some breadcrumbs for the future to
mm,
look back and say, dang, that's cool, you know?
right. Mother Bird,
Yes.
Miss B, you tell a story about being at Zanzibar when the word came that Nelson Mandela would be freed.
Oh
And you
man.
just talk about the impact of that having, that energy in the room there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You see me grab
Uh-huh.
myself every time I think about it. I get goose pimples because I'm always reading the news. Well, back then I was reading newspapers. We didn't have the internet, but I before I would go to the club because I had a show to do that night. I forget who was performing. Oh, it was the guy that sings Motherland. And just before I went to the club, they had announced on the news that in 2 weeks, Nelson Mandela would be freed. And so I was like, I could not wait to get to the club to tell everybody the good news. And when I said that, the pressure and power of excitement actually blew me back. Like I could
Mm,
feel, yes, I could feel the vibe from the people of how happy they were that this man that had been arrested and been locked up for 27 years is about to be free and then ended up becoming the president of South Africa. Where they do that at? You know what I'm saying? Wow. It
do,
was just so amazing to me.
do you remember the song that was played and what that after that announcement? Do you remember what everyone danced to?
Yeah, it was Motherland,
Motherland.
like Jay Williams.
Okay.
And it started out Africa, 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 and that's how the song started and continued on. And talk about a party, woo woo! We celebrated for Nelson Mandela that day.
Yeah, I bet you did. I unfortunately was not there. I can recall some nights at the Club Zanzibar, but
Mhm.
definitely I wasn't there for that one. Can you tell me what, we all often are asked, how has COVID affected us personally? How did COVID affect the house scene? This is for both of you.
You want to go first,
You
Jamara?
couldn't, other than you couldn't
No,
go out
I
dance.
know. Well, a couple of, I mean, okay, so I'll talk from, a creator, filmmaker, oral history person who was documenting. Well, one, it paused our entire production, and no one knew what we were going to do. And then, people started passing away. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, people who we had interviewed, DJs, promoters, managers, DJ Hutch passed away, other folks
Uh,
passed away.
that was
And
my
it was like, it was a really difficult time because none of us could, the thing, what's crazy amazing about the story about Nelson Mandela that you just told, Bert, is like when you're on that dance floor, you are celebrating with so many people.
Mm,
Like you're celebrating individual victories, like getting through the
yes,
day, getting through the week, but you're also having this collective experience with everyone. And so to not be able to have that collective experience of dancing together and feeling that beat together and being close to those speakers together, it was really difficult. Um,
yes.
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and what about you?
I've made a quote in the past in reference to that because we'd be in the club on Sunday and they would actually bring gospel choirs to the club, and we would have church in the club. And
Wow.
for me to explain that to them, I would tell them we dance as we praise our master.
Yeah, that house music to me is so has so much to do with it's just so spiritual, and
Yeah.
in that regard, and to see people really get their praise on the dance floor with the music and the DJs and the lights, uh, just it's just amazing. Okay, here's a good question: Zanzibar versus Club Shelter.
Oh God. Is that a question or a statement?
Well, what did you learn from your time at both of those places, and how do they differ, or how are they both similar?
Well, first of all, let me say this. Zanzibar was a prerequisite to the shelter,
Hmm.
as was Paradise Garage. And with those two clubs mashed together, became shelter. But
Oh,
that was because the garage closed and Zanzibar closed. And thank God Timmy had a vision that he wanted to do because he had visited Lagos, Nigeria to Fela Kute's club. And that's what he wanted to emulate.
mm.
And I don't know because I've never been there, but to hear him speak of it, I wish I could have. But I just know that if it wasn't for Zanzibar and Paradise Garage, shelter would have never existed. And I just remember when I first went to the shelter before I started working there, I was just leaving a party in Queens with Tony Humphreys and Abigail Adams, who I used to work for at Moving Records in East Orange. She said, "Do you want to go to the shelter?" And I was like, "The shelter? What are we going to do at the shelter? Talk to homeless people?" And she's like, "No, it's a club." I say, "Really? The shelter?" And she took me there, and I stood on them steps, and I saw all these bodies and arms up in the air and dancing. Timmy was playing "Be Optimistic"
Mm.
by
Sounds of Blackness.
and Sounds of Blackness and Nesby. And she
Hmm.
was performing that night. And I just saw these arms up in the air and all these bodies and movement. It seemed like everybody was in sync. And I said, "Abby, this is my new home. You had to live it. You had to be there." And the likes of people just stopping by, hanging out. Stevie Wonder, my nephew woke me up and said, "Stevie Wonder's up in the booth." I said, "No, he's not." I looked up and there was Stevie Wonder. One time I was running into the booth to pick up something and come back. I almost ran into Prince and almost knocked him over till his security just hanging out. They weren't
Right.
even performing. Janet Jackson, MC Light, Wesley Snipes, just hanging out. I'm like, wow, this is really something here.
House
Everybody
is
just don't go
really
to any
something.
club.
Yeah.
Like back in the day with Studio 54 and Grace Jones and da 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 da.
Well, Jamar, you have captured it. I cannot wait to see the film, which is on its way to coming to the public's eye. But the podcast is first is in collaboration with WBGO Studios, Newark Public Radio's podcast division, and the release is coming up on June 15th. Is that correct?
So the podcast will be released every Thursday in the month of June for Black
Mhm.
Music Month. And then on June 15th, we actually have a podcast release party at the Haynes Building at Express Newark.
I'll be there. And once again, it has been my pleasure to speak with you, Jamara, the producer behind Black House, Black Joy, along with the legendary House Mother. I wish I had like another hour to speak with you both, but we'll have to do that at some other time. It's been my pleasure to have you both here at WBGO. Thank you so much. All the best and all the best. Break a leg with the podcast and the film. And thank you both for being here today on WBGO.
Thank you.
.com?
.org.
.org.
.org.